Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Scotty Roberts. You're joining me here live on the Intrepid radio program. It's here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. We are currently broadcasting from our makeshift studio in our makeshift lifestyle down in Louisiana. So the surroundings may look different, the content is the same, and we are not broadcasting live on Odyssey. However, one of these days, these will all appear as audio archives over on Odyssey. Right now, right now over at Odyssey, they are playing one of the 450 different audio tracks that we have in archive. So if you listen to Odyssey Radio, go on over, check out their schedule. You can check out all the different times that Intrepid Radio plays on their lineup throughout the day, and you might hear some of the shows from quite a while back, just to refresh your memory on some of the things we've talked about here. And of course, you are joining me via my live stream over on YouTube. That's my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And if you're here, you don't need that address because you're already here. If you hear this in archive, at least you'll know where to go. And anyone who's here who's listening tonight, if you would like to hit the join button down below this video screen, you'll be able to join. Wait, I don't know if it's over here or if it's over here. You'll be able to join the channel, become a member. $2, $5, $15. Go click. You can see what the three different levels get you. And while the private memberships have gone a little bit cool these days, it's mostly because of displacement and makeshiftiness. So those are coming up again. So stay tuned for those of you who are our memories. To my left. Well, see, this is my right and this is my left. But on my camera monitor on my screen, it shows up like it's my left and like it's my right. So it's mirror reflection until it hits you guys. Somehow it magically all turns around. So if it's on the lower right, it's going to be of the screen. I think it's going to be right here. Well, it looks like it should be, but it's probably right here. There you go. How confusing is that? It's like the Nile River in Egypt runs north and flows into the Mediterranean. But the north of Egypt is called Lower Egypt, and the south of Egypt is called Upper Egypt. So the Nile runs from Upper Egypt in the south to Lower Egypt in the north. I confused that once. I was doing a live video from Egypt, standing up on one of the big cliffs overlooking the Nile at Gebel El Silsila, which is outside the Komombo. It's in the Komombo Inspectorate. And I had the Nile behind me flowing north. And I said, now the Nile is there. It's flowing north. It's going into lower, upper, lower. So there, you get the idea. So now we are here. I keep getting Rocky's patriotic show in front of me, and it won't stop. I don't know what's going on there. Everything keeps popping up. Ads keep popping up. I went to look online the other day. This just makes this come to mind. Don't go to those sites where you go, I'm going to put in the phone number and maybe I can find, or the name and find the person's listing. There is no 411 anymore. Everybody remember, old enough to remember 411? You could get on your dial phone or your push button phone and dial 411 and you'd get an operator. And they'd say, number, please. And I say, I'm looking for, you know, Leslie Holker. And it would say, and you give the city or the address, and they pull up the number and give it to you. Then they got into the point where they were charging you 25 cents per time. And then I think it went up to over $1.25 per shot. Now I don't think they have it anymore. But now you can go online and look up a number. You put in a name, a location, and I was looking up actually one of my clients here in the city. I had his number written down wrong. So I looked it up online and it said, you can buy for X number of dollars, you can buy this search. And we'll search not just his phone number, but his criminal records, his this, his that, his church attendance, his blood type, whatever it is. And I said, nah, forget it. And I shut it off. I keep every day, several times a day, getting a pop up in my lower right hand corner of my screen saying, we've still got his records available. Click here to see. And it's like, I don't want to know. I'm done. Stop. So there's that. And let's see how everybody's doing. Matt Finn, good to see you. Glad you're here, Master Finn. And Sean Bowden is here. Welcome, Beth Kirkham. Welcome to the show tonight. And Elder Barry is here. And Slightly Slanted Sleuth is here. And Barbie D is here with everybody else. Roger Rabbit, good to see you. I hope things are going well there with Kinsey and with Carly. Let's see what else we got. Doug Stack. Of course, Doug Stack is here. Good to see you, Doug. And Leslie Holker, of course, is here. And I'm just scrolling back to see if there's anybody I missed for right now. That's the beauty for me, is being able to say hi to everybody live. It takes a minute or so, but it's kind of fun. Let's see what else we got. People are throwing out their comments. My son Sam is here. What you doing? Oh, here you go. Sorry, picked those up and carried them in. And so he's not going to talk to us, I guess. So unless he wants to. And so he's in and out of the makeshift office here in the makeshift studio. So I want to welcome you all to the show tonight. Those of you who are not in the chat room, welcome to. You don't have to show up in the chat room, but if you're here, you're certainly welcome to contribute. And or you can be voyeuristic, like I like to do sometimes when I'm watching somebody's show. I don't always sign in, and I don't always say anything. So Iowa X says hi, folks. How you doing, Iowa? Let's see. What did Sean Bowden say? Sorry, sup dork. I meant Rocky. Missed something. It's in there somewhere. I'm sure it's back there. Please, I don't call people, whatever that is. All right, let's move on. I saw a very good quote from a friend of mine today. I will make mention of this friend. I've mentioned him in the past. He is somebody, and I don't think I ever told you how this thing kind of ended up and wrapped up. But a good friend of mine from the festival and high profile author, voice talent, um, ran business events, flew all around the world. Um, you could say he had hit that. I don't know that I would call him wealthy ever, but he hit that mark where most people would like to be in life. And, had $1.5 million house overlooking this pastoral hillside scene out in the country while he was doing all this stuff. Great guy, great friend, been a friend of mine for 20 years plus, and maybe longer. Married to a beautiful woman, a woman that before I knew him back in the late 90s when I was out at the Renaissance Festival, I used to flirt with every day. Because she was beautiful. And I would see her. She worked in one of the booths there. And I didn't flirt. It wasn't a nasty flirt like, how you doing? You want to do it? Hey. Not that kind of flirting. It was, I would pick up a rose every day from one of the street vendors. And I was Royal Guard, King's Royal Guard. We were dressed like beef eaters, with the big boots and red cloaks or tunics and all of that, and swords and all of that. And whenever I'd be out, I would always stop the column and I'd have a rose tucked in my belt. And I would see her in the booth she was working, and I would hold out the rose from the street, and I'd say, "Milady, for you," and you bow. And she would always come and get her rose, and it was very nice. It was a nice, fun, wonderful, friendly flirtation. And then I got to know her husband, who became a very close friend of mine, dear friend of mine now, and got to know them as a couple at the same time. And he is the fellow, all of that buildup. I know there's not many here that are familiar with that circle of friends of mine, other than by my mention of them. But he was the man who was almost 3 years ago, little over 2 years ago, was accused of rape by a young woman at the Renaissance Festival, of all places. And he was arrested, taken in, and booked. And his, guess what? The local newspapers, which are the big branches of the big Gannett newspapers and all of this, they had run for several years, every now and then, an article on him, whether his participation at the Renaissance Festival, his high role there, or his personal writing and his business writing. And he was profiled as I think, a local, you call him a local Twin Cities intellectual. And so he was accused of rape by a young woman. And immediately you saw people in the festival taking sides. There was that great gulf that was created. Some people who didn't like him seemed to be the people who were against him. Oh, he's a rapist. And then the people who liked him and loved him said that's no possible way. We know this man too well. And so all the mitigating circumstances and details in there, suffice it to say, he was charged, he was arrested, booked, released, I think a day and a half later, with this now hanging over his head. And so he had to start building up legal defense. This young woman, however, and I'm not naming any names, people who know this case intimately from up here would be able to identify who I'm talking about right away. But people familiar with this case would listen to the young woman's story and say, the time that she claimed the rape took place, the place on the festival grounds where she said the rape took place, and other details, none of them matched with the first response I had when I heard the details. Within 2 seconds, I laughed and I said, "How absurd! Anybody knows that that kind of activity couldn't take place at that spot at that time on the festival grounds. It would have been during a festival day, upstairs in the green rooms above the side building next to the building that hosted the feasts every day, 3 times a day. Um, and it would have been during the time that the drum jam started outside, which had led up for about a half an hour to closing gate. And that green room was filled with people, dozens of people coming in and out, in and out, in and out, costumes, dancers, actors. There was absolutely, it was the most ridiculous thing we had ever heard. Now, on with the actual story. So his case drags on. Her story changed a couple of times. There was a whole contingent at the festival, of course, of women that were saying, you, and this was right at the height of the Kavanaugh hearings, where Dr. Ford was, she was accusing Kavanaugh of having raped her when they were teenagers. And during the height of all this, and the height of the Me Too movement, and the height of the a woman must be believed, no matter what she said, you believe the woman. All of this, which was all political bullshit, as we know. And this was taking place at the same time, and believe it or not, on a smaller scale than the Supreme Court nominee, it was affecting a man's life back here or there up in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. Um, so, yeah, I missed the Renfest too, Beth Kirkham, slightly slanted sleuth. Yeah, gotta go. And so this trial didn't start till, well, they had hearings and then they got pushed out. His lawyer, my friend's lawyer, was saying this is so winnable, it's unbelievable. But the young woman would keep pushing the trial out. I got into a few online things, and my friend, told me, don't get into it on my behalf online. He says, I know what you're like, Scotty. You're gonna go out there and fight for me. He said, don't do it. He says, just let it sit. But what it did to him is it ruined his life. Now, I will say this. Let's cut to the upshot, and I'll go back to that thought. Just a few months ago, um, the young woman there was a court date, the big court date, and she said she wrote because she's now living out of state and said, "Oh, she can't make it because she's afraid of COVID." And the judge, I think, finally dismissed. He just dismissed the case. It's dismissed. So the whole thing got killed. But she didn't want to come up and appear in court over her rape charges, which she'd been hanging on to for almost 2 years because of COVID. It's funny, the judge was there, the defendant was there, the attorneys were there, the gallery was there, everybody was there, but she decided not to show up. So I agree with you, Leslie. I've said that to my friend many times. If a woman falsely accuses a man of rape, they should be prosecuted. There should be some circumstances. But of course, the way the community that supported her was well, my friend didn't prove anything. He just got dismissed because she's got a child and she's afraid of traveling in a time of COVID when everybody's afraid to travel and blah 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 blah. And I think this was in now this wasn't at the beginning in the huge hype and scare of COVID. This was, I think, in August, September, may have even been October of this last year. She was too afraid to travel because of COVID, to hop in her own car and drive up to the Minneapolis area and appear in court to stand on her charges. So they were dropped, my friend, and it was dismissed. But here's where I'm going with this. My friend, and I talked about this part of this before on this show, maybe a year and a half ago. But my friend, what happened to him as a result of the accusation? Publishing deals gone. His picture, his mugshot, not just his photograph. They couldn't even use the photograph they used of him sitting in his library or living room where they interviewed him for the paper a few years ago over his writing. They couldn't use that picture. No, they had to use his mugshot, dressed in the orange thing for the day they arrested him to book him. That's what appeared in the newspaper. And it says his name, festival uh, person and his position out there. He was part of the staff as well, high up in the staff. This person, um, I don't remember the wording, but rape charges filed against, Minnesota Renaissance Festival worker, or a creative director type of thing. And that's what appeared. And several articles followed up, but they would never say. And then when the case was dismissed, there was an article about it, but it wasn't as big and saucy as the rape charge for the Minnesota Renaissance Festival high up guy, high profile actor out there, high profile writer that they had profiled and interviewed more than once in the same newspaper years earlier, a couple of years earlier. So what it did was it stopped his publishing career. His publisher dropped him because, hey, we love you, man. We love your work, but we can't publish you while you're under indictment, awaiting trial. He lost his voiceover work. People wouldn't hire him to do voiceovers. Those of you from this area, you've probably heard his voice in several ads on the radio. They drained their savings. He was also a freelance photographer and couldn't act as a photographer. He couldn't get work as a photographer. He basically was held on, put on hold for his whole life. And there were times I talked with him where he was very up because, his lawyers encouraging him and the people who love him encouraging him. And there are times he was very down and said, when this is all over, we're gonna move somewhere else and fade into the woodwork. He says, I don't want to have any part of trying to build up any kind of lost reputation. He says, I just want out. And by the way, during this whole time, for 2 years, restrictions. He couldn't leave the state because he was awaiting trial out on not probation, parole. I don't even know if it was parole. He was just booked and released on his own, and but they had to pay money, of course. And his wife works, and they were supporting. And I'm sure he had some savings, but he drained everything he had on his defense, paying his attorney, showing up to these hearings over and over again. And of course, they dug into the young lady's past, who had apparently, from what I had heard, I don't have this fact maybe perfectly straight, so don't quote me, but had done similar things to people in the past, to men in the past. Very young woman. My friend is 2 years older than I am. She's 62. She's probably 23, 24, 25, somewhere in that range. And so the accusation went a long way to destroying a man's career and his life. Um, I don't know what's come of hers, don't care. And in many conversations I had with my friend over the last couple of years, before this was all over, there was a lot of, we talked spiritual things. He'd been an atheist and things, and he says, he says, I haven't always been an atheist. He says, I question things, and he's more has been recently. He had been taking up his Buddhism, and I think that's what it was, Buddhism, Zen, and looking into that. And sometimes we talk about God. Many times we talk about politics. We talk about books and literary things, and sometimes just goofy talking to each other. And it's been a few months since I've seen him face to face. We used to go out, or we went out for a couple of beers in an Irish pub a few months back. And um, so once this was dismissed, of course, he was elated, and his lovely wife was elated as well. And but he's finding the rebuilding process is slow, but he's getting back into it. And he posted something today, and I wanted to read it. All that lengthy 23-minute build up was to give you this little quote that he posted today. And he posts these things on his Facebook. And he also sometimes just sends me quotes or articles or books he's reading. And he said this. He said, what a lovely written passage on observing a group of trees. Oh, wait, this isn't the quote. This is the wrong quote. It's a different day. I'm sorry. Um, but I'll read you this. This is something he wrote a week ago. He said, what a lovely written passage on observing a group of trees from the book My Struggle by Carl Ove Nosgard. The quote said, it was strange how all large trees had their own personalities, expressed through their unique forms and the aura created by the combined effects of the trunk and roots, the bark and branches, the light and shadow. It was as if they could speak, not with voices, of course, but with what they were. They seemed to stretch out to whoever looked at them. And that was all they spoke about, what they were, and nothing else. But he put up a passage today. I've got to see if it's still here, and I hope it is. Um, let's see. Hang on, guys. I thought I had it up here, and now it's not showing in his post. Let me try one more time. I'm going to refresh his page and see if it's on there. Sometimes posts just disappear, then you refresh and they're back again. Um, Let's see. I'm looking. Hold on. No, this is from more days ago. So I'm a little disappointed that that's not there. I had copied the link and I had sent it to myself, but it appears that even that will not go where it's supposed to go. Let's see. I'm going to see if it shows up here by any chance. Bear with me. It's worth looking at. Now I don't see it. That is very sad indeed. And now it bothers me that I can't find that, folks. So sorry for that little pause. I'm going to go through, just scroll through my, you know what? It might even be up on my phone because that's where I saw it. And that's why I sent it to myself. So give me a second while I look for this and see if I can find this. I'm going to see if it's still in here somewhere or if I already scrolled very too far away to find it. Let's see. Looking for his name. And he uses a pseudonym on Facebook, but everybody who knows him knows it's him. I'm looking to see if it's here. Hold on. I don't think it is. He either removed it or, and I hate that when you look at a post on your phone and you go back to find it again, it eliminates it off of your list. So it's gone. And I don't see it unless it was much earlier than I thought it was. And yeah, it's gone. So, and I can't quote it, but it was all that build up just to give this quote because this quote was so um, spot on, and it was from a book, and it talked about really about the angst of believing sometimes in God, and it expressed to me what I know about my friends so very well, and uh, I wish I could remember it. I wish I had had the ability to spot memorize it a half an hour ago, 40 minutes ago when I saw it, and I do not. So I think he may have taken that down. Not sure why. I'm sure he's got his own reasons for taking that down, and it's too bad. Unless it's something he wrote quite a while ago and somebody had responded to it, and so, it popped up when it did. Um, I'm still looking. I'm sorry for the pause. I really do want to find this, and it bothers me that it's not there because it was such a profound quote, and I thought it was new. Um, I'm going to, while we're on the radio talking here, I'm going to just send him a quick message and ask him to send me that quote and see if he gets that tonight. Hold on. Let's see. Hang on. Hang on. Let's see. What was that quote you posted regarding belief? Okay, we'll see if he gets back to me. All right. So there you go, folks. Let me see what's yeah, perhaps he deleted it. I don't know why he would. It was a profound quote. But sometimes he just puts up thoughts of the day that he's having and then later deletes them. He does dog photography. Um, if you've ever seen on my website, scottallenroberts.com, if you go over there, I think you will see in book cover designs. Oh, that would give away his name. Never mind. Um, I don't think I want to make his name handy. But I had done a design for a book cover for him just before all this started, and something he was going to do on national parks and dogs and people and their dogs. He takes a lot of pictures of people and their dogs, and he's really very good. He's an artist. Um, Field guy just said the National Weather Service says they're extending the hurricane season till December 1st now. Oh, joy. Uh, so, anyway, there you go. I know you were all talking, and I was a little preoccupied with doing what I was doing and trying to find that quote. And well, seeing here in my own messenger files, that's weird. I had sent it to my own messenger, and I'm looking, and the one right above it, I sent to myself, or somebody sent it to me, of that picture of Rainey crawling across the bar back in 2005 toward me on the bar. So, that's interesting. So, a unique mix of things. The link I sent myself is there. It just won't link up. It won't connect. So, that's bothersome to me. Doesn't even click on his name. It's probably because he dropped it. He may have just taken it down. And it was a very profound quote. So if it comes in, I'll let you know. So can we segue all of this into the topic for tonight? Consciousness, um, consciousness, the whole soul existence, the idea of the mind body gap that requires this fundamental shift in our perspective, perhaps, about consciousness. We started talking about it last night, and I kind of left off on it because we ran out of time. And I don't know if there's a straight segue into this. Consciousness. I've always thought of consciousness as being beyond sentience. It's that having that ability to be so aware. And I'm talking like awake and aware, like we had talked about several months ago and several times. And so I think what happened to my friend was an awakening experience, was awareness. It was something he never thought he'd have to go through. Um, and so that's not a direct segue, but maybe it gets us into talking about consciousness, about talking about the mind and the body connection to consciousness. We kind of left off last night talking about um, this theory of GWT, the global workspace. And the global workspace theory was formulated by Bernard Bars, and he was a native Dutch neuroscientist, and he talked about progress in the brain research. And it goes on from his there it is. Wait, he's asking me when. Um, I thought it was today. Something about the last lines of a book on a book. The quote was on lost belief. Um, so there you go. How's that for a scintillating live radio there? Typing to my friend. And so I'm going to, I don't know whether to brighten that or dim it. So, oh yes, it's an amazing quote. Hold on, my friend says. This is coming from my friend. He's going to get it for me. Um, so, in talking about this whole consciousness thing, um, we can start looking at what if consciousness comes first, is the question that's asked. And it's the building the mind body gap, bridging the mind body gap is going to require a fundamental shift in our perspectives about things. And despite the success of neuroscience in really establishing a wide range of correlations between brain processes and conscious experience, there's at least one question about the relationship between the brain and the consciousness and consciousness in general that continues to appear unanswerable, even in principle. And this is the question of why we have conscious experience at all. What gives us sentience? Where does that come from? Is it evolutionary? Was it imbued in us by a creator? Where does consciousness come from? That awareness, that awakeness, that sentience, that realization about myself and things around me on a rational level, on a reasoning level. Where does that come from? Where do y'all think that comes from? How is it related to the gut? Says Johann Dancing Gypsy. Exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So, this is the question of why we have, it's the question of why we have conscious experience at all. And the problem is that there could conceivably be brains that perform all the same sensory and decision making functions as ours, but in which there is no conscious experience. Do birds have conscious experience? Do snakes? Do ants? Is that consciousness? Oh, there we go. I think there it is. Uh, Bingo. On radio right now and wanted to share it. Thanks. All right. There you go, folks. Okay, I've got this quote here. And it goes like this. I'm jumping gears now. Everybody pay attention because I've shifted all around now. Now we've gone from that story I told you at the beginning to consciousness. And I want to go back to that story. And you tell me about this. Do animals think like this? Scott Allen says, I like how Scotty calls this radio. Well, Scott Allen, the whole thing is that this is a radio show. But now we're doing just live streams until we get it back up on the radio. I've been doing radio since 2000, broadcasting on network radio. And so right now we're just doing streams. So why change the habits of speech just to say, oh, by the way, now on this live stream that we're broadcasting from, it's not really my radio show. It's the live stream that would be the simulcast of my radio show being broadcast on the Odyssey Network. But because we can't do that now because of software handicaps in the makeshift studio, we're now on live stream. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, whatever form. I'm on board, says Scott. Thank you, Scott Allen. So it goes like this quote that my friend just sent me. He says, oh, yes, it's an amazing quote. Hold on. He says, it's at the end of the book, the very last line, actually, of the book. And it's about doubt and uncertainty. And it's on Huysman's, I think, or Huysman's, however you pronounce it, Huysman, Huysman's book called A Rebour, Rebours. A Rebour. And the quote goes like this. O Lord, pity the Christian who doubts, the skeptic who would believe, the convict, and this goes on. It's jumping around a little bit because he added some more comments after that. He says, O Lord, pity the Christian who doubts, the skeptic who would believe, the convict of life embarking alone in the night, under a sky no longer illuminated by the consoling beacons of ancient faith. End quote. Now, I thought that was very profound. And it's a Joris Karl Huysman. If you want to look that guy up, you certainly can. So I was very, very moved by this quote today. And I'm going to give it to you one more time so it sinks in. You're not reading it, so let it sink into your mind. O Lord, pity the Christian who doubts, the skeptic who would believe, the convict of life embarking alone in the night, under a sky no longer illuminated by the consoling beacons of ancient faith. That was the close of his line. And this is a French novelist who wrote this. So, very profound indeed, says Leslie. And I think my friend had felt some of this over the last couple of years. That perhaps abandonment of old faith he had abandoned, preferring the intellectual, the why does intellectual always seem to equate with atheistic? But that's where he had gone, and he kind of found some console in trying to go back and finding his faith, wherever it might lay. And he says it's different. It's like coming full circle, but things are different now. And this is the quote he put up. It moved him, and so he put it up. And it's very moving indeed. Yeah, it's Purty, as says Beth Kirkham. Yes, it is. Oh, unless you're talking about Florida, Matt Finn says. I think Steph. Hey, Steph, how you doing? Good to see you here. And so that's the quote, and I thought it was worth sharing tonight. And as we go on into consciousness, we're in a sense we're looking at that where science is trying to describe something that our faith, Judeo-Christian faith anyway, and other faiths as well, talk about God breathing into nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Genesis tells us. That, according to Genesis, is where consciousness came from, sentience in humans. So, but as we were looking at this from a scientific standpoint, the problem is that there could conceivably be brains that perform all the same sensory and decision making functions as ours, but in which there is absolutely no conscious experience. That is, there could be brains that react as though sad, but don't really feel sadness. Brains that can discriminate between wavelengths of light, but that don't see red or yellow or any other color. Brains that direct their bodies to eat certain foods, but that don't taste those foods. So, why is there nevertheless something that it's like to be us? What's more, why do our experiences have the particular qualities that they do? Why does red look red and not blue, unless you're colorblind? Then it's blue to you. Why do, or blue is the color of red to you in that case? Why do rotten eggs smell the way they do instead of like roses or ripe strawberries? And how do we know that these things look and smell the same to everyone? We don't. Some researchers hold on to the hope that if we just continue to investigate the brain's physical properties, we're going to eventually be able to explain why conscious experience exists and why it has the intrinsic qualities that it does. But the problem is more intractable than that. The issue is that physical properties are by their nature relational, aren't they? They work together. They're relational, dispositional properties. That is, they describe the way that something is related to the other things and or has the disposition to affect or to be affected by those other things. Most notably, physical properties describe the way that something affects an outside observer of that thing. But there's something going on in conscious experience that goes beyond how that conscious experience affects people looking at it from the outside. And for this reason, the what it's like to be conscious minded can't be described in the purely rational dispositional terms that are accessible to science. There's just no way to get them there or here, depending on what your perspective is. So let me ask you, in describing this conscious mind, this sentience, this awareness, this awakeness, if you will, again, not woke. Woke is bullshit. I'm talking about being awake and aware that you're awake. This ability to understand rationale and reason. We might say animals can be conscious because they sleep just like humans sleep. Are we conscious when we sleep? No, we're unconscious. So looking at it the step beyond, excuse me, just being awake, but being aware and being rational and reasonable about what you are aware of. For instance, how many animals do you know out there that will take another animal to court for stealing its food or for eating its young, killing its babies? Are there any courts established by the animal kingdom where an animal, say an eagle, can be taken to court and tried and convicted for snatching up a groundhog on the prairie? And his family gets together and sues him. Is there animal justice? Maybe. There are sometimes you see some of the remarkable films in documentaries of animals. You know, a lion attacking a zebra, a baby zebra, and another zebra or two come and start kicking the lion, and they free the baby from its jaws. Is that animal justice? Could those zebras and those lions eventually evolve to develop court systems, to build buildings in which to house their court systems, to eventually build some zebra someday builds a device that's able to record the voices of each other so they can record their court sessions? Of course not. Right now, where we're at now, we would consider those non sentient beings. They're not aware. They're aware of their surroundings, but they're not aware of the rationale and the reason that is there. So you wouldn't classify them as a sentient species, although they are aware on one level. So the explanatory gap that's now commonly referred to as the hard problem of consciousness, thanks to a paper and book written by a philosopher of mind, David Chalmers, some 20 years ago in the mid 90s. Um, the decade since Chalmers' statement of the problem have seen plenty of solutions proposed, but none of them has dealt satisfactorily with the core issue outlined about what we just talked about, that no physical property or set of properties can explain what it's like to be conscious in the terms and the definition that we're using by science. There is, however, one elegant solution to the riddle of how to explain the relationship between consciousness and physical properties. And many illustrious philosophers throughout history have held to this view. And if it's rarely considered today, this is likely because it requires such a radical shift in perspective. Nevertheless, if we're ever going to understand consciousness as defined and its relationship to the physical world around us, I believe this is a shift we're going to have to make. And the key to resolving the hard problem of consciousness lies in the following observation. While physical properties cannot explain consciousness, consciousness is needed to explain physical properties. Now, there's a paradox for you. Think about that for a second. While physical properties cannot explain consciousness, consciousness is required to explain physical properties. Ever think about that? As previously noted, physical properties are purely relational and dispositional. They don't tell us what physical things they are in themselves, only how they're related to other things and how they're disposed to be related to them in the future. And if all we ever had was relational dispositional properties, that is, if everything is only defined in terms of understanding other things, then ultimately we have defined nothing at all. See how philosophy can sometimes get a little backtracked on itself and it brings you around in this circle. You have to keep thinking. And it's as though someone created a very elaborate spreadsheet and they carefully defined how the values in every cell would be related to the values in all the other cells. However, if nobody enters a definite value, a definitive value for at least one of these cells, then none of the cells will have any value. In the same way, if the universe is to actually exist at all, its properties can't be exclusively relational or dispositional. Something in the universe has to have some kind of quality in and of itself to give the other relational dispositional properties any meaning at all. And something has to get the ball rolling. And that something, at least in our universe, is guess what? It's consciousness. If we look carefully, we can see that all of the physical properties that science has so carefully measured and cataloged ultimately derive their meaning from the effects they produce on a conscious observer. Consciousness is required for those to mean anything. The person who's holding the yardstick or looking at the fMRI or gazing at the interference pattern produced by the double slit experiment, even the properties of the basic particles of physics derive their meaning from the ways that these particles ultimately affect the conscious observations that we make of them. Consciousness has to exist to understand, comprehend, explain what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. And science can only tell us that when a photon or an electron is present, our conscious experience of the equipment detecting these particles will be affected in a certain way. In fact, a large number of quantum physicists believe that consciousness is even more central to the operation of the physical world than this. But we'll have to save that for another time. We'll get into that. That's a whole other thing. But ultimately, the hard problem of consciousness is the result of a category mistake. We've been trying to reduce consciousness to physical properties when it's consciousness that's the more comprehensive category. And it's only in terms of consciousness that physical properties themselves can be understood. For example, it was the great 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant who pointed out that rather than consciousness being located inside of space and time, it's space and time that are themselves part of consciousness. Now, he said that way back in the 1780s. We've learned a little bit more about how things work since then, but I think he wasn't far off. Now, one can see how our having gotten this basic ontological relationship the wrong way around could be at the root of many of our frustrations in understanding not only the relationship between consciousness and the physical world, but also the nature of consciousness itself. Recognizing the ontological primacy of consciousness could finally open the door to the kind of research that promises answers to some of our most pressing questions. Consciousness, that's right up there with why am I here? Where am I going? What am I? And rather than trying to reduce consciousness to fit into the box of relational and dispositional properties, maybe it's time we start to begin to explore consciousness for what it is and for the answers that studying it on its own terms and its full splendor and variety stand to provide. So, consciousness, the mind and body connection between consciousness. Barbie D says, I'm understanding it more as I listen. Yeah. When you think about that simple paradox in a way is that the physical can only be understood by consciousness, but consciousness cannot be seen or understood by physical objects. the relational, the dispensation, the dispositional. So, let me see some of your comments in here. I'm very curious what y'all are thinking here. They may deem themselves awoke, but they aren't conscious when it comes to reality. Yeah, there is that. I would have to agree with you there. I went full German, says Iowa X. Yes, I went full German on you. And if you don't know the Deutsch homeland language, the motherland, then of course that you will be lost in my Englishness while I put my German, my Deutschness there for you to comprehend. And remember, I don't exist in the mornings. I said can't. Can't. It was can't, Iowa X. So the whole thing is lost in me, said Beth Kirkham. Yeah, it's there is a wraparound way to discuss these things because you're starting at one point and trying to work your way back to that point and see if you're gaining any ground in understanding. And sometimes we come back to the same thing, and I go, I'm just as kind of like I don't know what 10,000 is that the same as 10 hundred or 100 hundreds or 10 or 1,000 tens? So you don't know until you got to start working it out, and you keep working it out and keep working it out. And this philosophy, of course, tends to go back on itself and backpedal a bit sometimes to try to get to a further answer, something of better understanding. Um, does the soul exist, do you think? This was one of the first things we talked about regarding consciousness. What's the soul? Remember the biblical passage, and we mentioned it once tonight already. When God created Adam and formed him out of the dust of the ground, and he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Soul. Let me ask you, and I've asked this question before, sometimes a little tongue in cheek, but I'll ask you again. Are you a dichotomist or a trichotomist? Dichotomy or trichotomy? The dichotomist would say there is body and spirit. The trichotomist would say there is body, soul, and spirit. Is there a difference between soul and spirit? Is there really a difference between soul and body? If soul is what gives the body the spark of life. Imagine if you could eradicate the soul and you would just have the body, soul or spirit, whether you're dichotomist or trichotomist, and all you have is body. Would the brain still, and the brain was still functioning, would the brain allow you to do the tasks you're doing? Would the brain help you find the food you need and so on? You'd be maybe as base as the other animals, if you will, for lack of a better way to say that. And while they know that a dog knows it likes to eat meat, can it give you the reason why it eats meat? Can it one day decide, I'm getting a little plump around the middle. I think I shall, instead of a zebra, that patch of strawberries. And I will eat strawberries from now on and grass and bark, tree bark. That sounds really good, especially for a dog. But he gives up meat. Can a dog consciously give up meat? Rationally, reasonably give up meat and say, I am a carnivore, but I am going to become a vegan. Can a dog do that? Can any animal do that? Can leaf eaters, herbivores, suddenly decide that they want to be, they want a red blooded, juicy piece of meat, a leg of lamb, a side of veal, pork? Can an herbivore have that? Can an herbivore actually decide and make a cognitive, conscious, reasoned decision to make that change? No, probably not. And we all know that already. So I have Chi-Chi, have yet to see one take down a zebra, says Beth Kirkham. But he does like food. Yeah, not your freaking dog, Steph Cuervo Queen. I like that. I wish I had Antonio Banderas' voice for that. Steph Cuervo Queen. So, but your freaking dogs, they like fruit. Well, they like fruit. Would your dog, can he make a conscious decision to say, no, no, mother, not the dog food. Feed me the pineapple, please. Can he do that? Field guy, you're right there. God gave us free will to do stupid shit. But we have to have a reasoned mind, a sentient, conscious mind to be able to act on that and to do stupid things or positive things. So there you go, folks. That's all we got for tonight. Believe it or not, the hour's up. We've actually gone over a few minutes already. Well, 1 minute. So we're done for tonight. We're done. I could go on forever. We could have the nonstop talking face Scotty Roberts on my radio show, Scott Allen, the live stream of my radio show. One of these days, once we get software all squared away again, down in the makeshift studio in my makeshift life down in Louisiana for a few months. We're already through 1 month of 4 that I plan to be down here. So I'm already 25% done with my sojourn away from my wife and family. And hopefully that last 75% accomplishes the goal I'm down here to achieve. Matt says, in fact, after Motherella's show today, I felt inspired to channel some of my ancestral souls. Wrote a poem out of it. Oh, Matt, I'd love to see that. You can share it here in the chat room or send it to me. I'd love to see that. Scott Owen says, I love your radio show. Thank you, sir. And you know I'm just giving you shit. So stay healthy, everyone. Says Morgan Snow, good to see you. Glad you could make it in tonight. Michelle Kenham Free here. I have not seen her yet. I may have missed her coming in if she's here. Hey, if you're not, hey, in archive. So, guys, thanks for being here. Did you know that you can go to the main channel here on my YouTube and find over 450 archived shows for the Intrepid radio program? And so you could have, that's 450 hours at the bare minimum, probably closer to 500 hours if you add in all the extra time and all the runovers that we do. Now, when we're on radio, we can't do the runovers. When I'm broadcasting on Odyssey, I got a 25-minute segment and a 28.5-minute segment. And if I run over, I'm cut off by the ads in the next show coming in. So there were times that we've said, hey, if you're listening live tonight and you want to hear more on the discussion, we're going to continue it over in the live chat room over on Facebook. And we do that. So there's going to be a lot more hours cataloged over there on YouTube. Great show, Scotty. Have a great night, says Doug Stack. Same to you, brother. 53.5 out of 60 minutes. Thank you, field guy, for calculating, Mr. Spock. So Michelle is in here somewhere. Hey, Michelle. I don't know where you are. Have a good night. Welcome. If I missed you earlier. And again, as always, it's great to see you all here. I appreciate those of you who pop into the chat room and want to make your mind known and talk about other things. We are still thinking about possibly doing a trip this summer up to Fort Ticonderoga, Ticonderoga, New York, upstate New York, where Fort Ticonderoga, the historical fort, lay. And also, and this would be with owner of Odyssey Radio, which is sister station to Mojo 50. Many of you listen to Rocky Stucci over there, and Matt Locke and others. And we're planning on doing a trip up there to Ticonderoga, because little tiny Ticonderoga, New York, has, of all things, a site up there that was built by somebody who lives there. And he got his hands on the blueprints of the original Desilu Studios and has totally reconstructed the studios for the original Star Trek sets from the 1960s. You can go look those up. Star Trek set tours or something. Just go look that up. Ticonderoga, New York. And if you don't know how to spell Ticonderoga, it's on the pencil. And so go to Ticonderoga. We're planning a trip up there, possibly coinciding it when William Shatner is supposed to be visiting there in middle to the end of July. Now that might just be a hair-pulling zoo to try to go at that time. I saw pictures from the last time Shatner was there, and it didn't look overly crowded. It's not like the big city conventions. So we're still trying to find a good way to do that. So maybe we'll all get a chance to see each other. Everybody that wants to come up and spend a day going through the sets, the old Star Trek set reconstruction. They're gorgeous. Go look up some of the photos of that place. It's awesome. Great. Someone put those on display. Definitely, if that's what you're talking about. So there's a gift shop there, I think. I know that Russ, who owns Odyssey Radio, has a gift shop at his headquarters for his foundation, the Federation. And so it's pretty cool. You can look up Trek Federation. It's either .com or .org. I'm not sure which it is, but he is a foundation. And there you go. All right, folks. We're going to call it quits. I want to thank you for being here. If you want to become a member, do that. Hit the join button. If you want to just donate to this cause, this is the cause, to my research and things like that, you are welcome to do that as well. And there's a little, I think there's a dollar sign down below. And there's also, you can go to the main page here, click on the donate button. And I'm not holding out the palm of my hand and saying, please give us your dollars so we can continue this ministry to lost souls. I'm not saying that, and I'm not mocking it as much as I'm. But come on over if you have the feeling to do so. You're welcome to do it. We'll appreciate everything that comes in to support this show. And on that note, I'm going to sign off now of my radio show. All right, everybody, thanks for being here. We're going to see you tomorrow night, same time, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Australia, 2 the next afternoon in Australia, but at the same time. So I want to thank you all for being here. We'll see you later. You know what? Live long and prosper. Love you, folks. Good night.